Welcome to the show where we are spotlighting the founders, innovators and behind the scenes players shaping Aotearoa's entrepreneurial ecosystem. I'm your host Alex and this is The Launchpad, brought to you by Young Enterprise.
In today's episode, we're talking to Alli Kennedy, the creator of Sharenanigans, the quick and competitive board game that brings the basic principles of investing to family game night across Aotearoa. Alli's journey is a true founder's story. From sketching out her first game concept to raising $50,000 in startup capital, manufacturing in China, and eventually landing Sharenanigans on the shelves of retails across New Zealand. She's done it all with purpose, creativity, and a whole lot of hustle. Alli, welcome to the Launchpad.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure to have an alumni on our podcast. And I guess I always start then by saying kind of what was your YES product? What did you do when you were at high school? It's always kind of a giggle to reflect on, I think, for many of our founders.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
But my product was called Suck It Straws. It was a metal straw company. Very much in the Save the Turtle era. That was kind of the trends on social media. I mean, it's still a good trend to get behind. But yeah, so we found pretty coloured metal straws and thought, let's manufacture those and sell them.
Did you have much success with your YES company?
We definitely had straws left over,
Yeah.
That's for sure. We made
presents for everyone.
Yeah,
for
we made it a tiny bit. We actually made more money. We did a pre-seed fundraising of selling snow cones at Athletics Day.
Yeah.
And we made more money that day than we did in selling metal straws.
It's all about the journey.
Oh, it is. We learned a lot.
So how did you go from, making your metal straws and snow cones to founding Sharenanigans?
So definitely YES was first part of that journey. I always said from probably 8 to 10 years old that I wanted to start a business. That was what I wanted to do, even if I didn't really know what that meant back then. And Young Enterprise Scheme was kind of it cemented that. I did Entrepreneurs in Action, got the chance to go to Chile and see business globally, what it looks like outside of just 5 million people. And so then from there went to University of Canterbury to study strategy and entrepreneurship and a minor of innovation. And that's when I really deep dived into business, into what entrepreneurship is. And it was in one of my lectures where I had to pitch a problem. And so pitched the lack of investing knowledge in New Zealand. Didn't really think much of it at the time. I just saw it as more of an assignment. And from that, thought I was going to create an app about how to invest in shares, kind of a Duolingo, but for the share market. So basic building blocks. And after that assignment, that's what I submitted as the solution to lack of knowledge. I thought, you know what, there's feet to this idea. So kept rolling with it. I participated in 2 accelerator programs, an 8-week program here at uni, and then a 10-week, the Summer Startup program here at the Entrepreneurship Centre, and started to really deep dive into the problem and worked out that it's not actually a lack of knowledge about investing in shares in New Zealand, but it's more there's a lack of conversation. There's so much information online. If you yourself know that, this is kind of something that I should look into, the whole financial literacy topic, investing in shares, then you can go do that. Whereas I realized that the real problem stems from not enough people in New Zealand actually talk about investing in shares. We're very property focused, or we don't talk about finance at all in the household because if our parents didn't grow up with it, then it's not something to pass down. Anyway, long story short, in the 10-week accelerator program, was being told by parents and teachers, not another app. We're trying to get our kids off their devices. Good luck getting my kid off TikTok and onto an app about investing. And it eventually just turned into a board game, which is what Sharenanigans is now. So our purpose is to spark conversation and to spark curiosity around the share market.
So I'm guessing from that then you had very little experience in game design or investing prior to starting Sharenanigans?
Yes. So the problem came from myself of my parents didn't really know much. My dad didn't know much about investing, and therefore it wasn't really something brought up in my household. So I got to university and probably saw a TikTok or something about it and thought, I know nothing about that. I don't know where to start, and I feel like I'm not the typical investor, so why bother? And really started thinking about that it's not just me in that boat. So yeah, I had no financial or investing knowledge, so started to teach myself, and that's when I learned it's actually very simple to get started. You've just got to know where to start. And yeah, knew nothing about how to create a board game at all.
So what kind of challenges did you find getting started on your journey for building Shenanigans? What were the kind of first bits that kind of probably maybe almost put you off?
The first thing's probably always going to be, you're like, right, I've got this cider prototype, which was a Monopoly board with paper stuck over top of it. And when I'd game trial, I'd just rip stuff off and put it back on. And then it turned into just a printout game, and I had a fishing tackle box as my market price sliders with zip ties that could slide up and down. And so you've got either drawings or a prototype, something like that, and then you think, how am I meant to turn this into a professional product that can be on the shelves? And we've got all these uniquely designed ideas, and you think, oh, how am I going to find someone that's going to be able to actually turn this into something when it doesn't even exist yet in the world? And so there's always, and I think a lot of people find that block of, is it even possible? Probably what I've learned is there's so many manufacturers out there that if you have an idea, it can absolutely 100% be made no matter what. I think that was the first thing, was getting over the mental block of, is this going to be capable? And then of course it was the financial side. I created it outside of uni, a couple years, 2 years outside of uni was when we launched. But it was still, how am I going to afford to make this happen? And then it was, of course, making sure there was the right financial literacy, right financial knowledge in the game, which came from just talking to a lot of people who knew a lot more about investing than I did.
Awesome. I guess going on to that, manufacturing a game can be expensive. And I know that you had a pretty successful capital raise, but that can be quite hard. How did you go about kind of getting that initial startup? What did you do?
Yeah, so we did, I suppose, multiple things. The very first thing that we looked into was, well, two things. We live in an amazing country with lots of cool opportunities like grants. So we looked at what grants were out there. And then also the main way is we did a crowdfunding campaign. So crowdfunding is essentially you get money from a whole heap of people in exchange for either a product, so you can pre-sell, or some people do it for equity. We decided that we were essentially just going to do it like a pre-sale campaign. So we used Pledge Me and essentially set our goal at $40,000, meaning that if we don't hit $40,000 in 3 weeks of pre-sales, then we don't get any of that money, because people were putting money down for a product that didn't even exist yet. So there's risk involved. So I knew that with $40,000 we could absolutely make this happen. So we launched this Pledge Me. People say don't build a community at the same time that you crowdfund. I was impatient, so I thought I'll just do both. So we essentially launched to not really anyone. And it was a long 3 weeks of hustle. We ended up raising just over $48,000 through the Pledge Me, plus we got some external funding as well during that time, for it to be just over $50,000 in 3 weeks of pre-sales. And we also sold spots on the board to different businesses. It's very full on, but it was so worth it. And the biggest thing for us during that time was PR. It was getting on traditional media, the news, 7 Sharp, any radio, podcasts, and it was definitely me driving that. We also got 2 grants through the King's Trust, and then also our other one through the Christchurch Female Grant, or the Christchurch Foundation Female Business Grant as well. So got very lucky, but also, worked very hard in the early stages to make sure that we could actually make this happen, and that finance was never going to be something that kept me from doing this, which I think so many people get caught up in that trap, but it is possible.
I think it's impressive to see how much hustle you had to do in that 3 weeks. I know that I saw it online and saw how much you're posting, and that 7 Sharp interview really made a huge difference, right? For your campaign, from kind of where you were pre that interview to how much it platformed.
I think we did $22,000 just from a 5-minute, $22,000 just from a 5-minute 7 Sharp ad. So pretty valuable ad. It wasn't an ad, it was an interview. We didn't pay for it, but yeah.
It just shows how much getting that kind of brand awareness out there can make that massive difference, right? And just asking and taking the opportunity.
100%.
How do you kind of, you've made yourself kind of quite front facing in your marketing. Was that strategic or just kind of naturally happened?
Probably a little bit of both, but definitely a lot of strategy behind it, especially in New Zealand. There's the whole saying of people buy from people. I knew right from the start that because it was a product that came from my own personal story, my own personal journey, and a lot of people could relate to that, it was like that was the messaging behind our brand, really, and wanted to make sure that the real purpose and the messaging of the brand didn't get lost behind, oh, it's just a fun game that you can enjoy. Yes, it is. But I knew that if we were pushing my story, the purpose, that it was going to connect to people more and they're more likely to buy it. Probably like as we go overseas, stepping away from that front facing a bit more because you don't really have that young local entrepreneur play anymore. But yeah, it was definitely a push to get out there. Same with on TikTok, the videos that do the best in the business space, the founder story, the underdog starting from scratch and working your way up. It's those sort of things that people these days connect to rather than here's another product. So yeah, it's finding the balance, finding what works.
Now, you were doing this alongside studying Sharenanigans, or did this come post-study for you?
So started the idea while studying. So I was second year when I first came up with the idea. Third year, kept kind of working in the background. I was still designing the game. We were working out how it was all going to work. We were doing lots of game trials, looking into manufacturers, that sort of thing. But it was still in the background. Then when I left, I thought I was going to be going full-time into it and really making it happen. Then I got offered a job in Auckland and kind of followed the pack of getting a graduate job and felt like that's what I needed to do. I should get experience before starting a business. And then within 9 months, I left that, came back to Christchurch, decided to go full-time because I knew that I just couldn't work for someone. I was, especially when I had this idea that I knew was there, I wasn't going to be able to give my all to a job when I knew that I had this that I wanted to start up. So I couldn't just follow what everyone else was doing and stick to that path. So it wasn't until my second year out of uni where I decided, right, let's go for it. Got them all manufactured and did our Pledge Me campaign, crowdfunding, and then got them manufactured, and that's when you're like, well, now I'm doing it.
What was that kind of manufacturing journey like for you from that prototype, as you said, sticking on different pieces onto the game board and on top of a Monopoly board, nonetheless, to what you've got now, which is a really high quality game that's on the shelves of the likes of the Warehouse. And I've seen your billboards as I've driven around in Wellington, and I always have a giggle.
Yeah, it was quite a long process actually. I think now we've obviously got it down to a T if we can bring out new games a bit quicker. Now that we've got all those manufacturing relationships set up. It's definitely a lot of trial and error of you're getting lots of quotes from manufacturers, you're seeing where the best manufacturers are. Obviously, when you're starting out, you're like, oh, it'd be awesome to get it made in New Zealand. But we knew straight away it was going to cost about $300 per game to get them made in New Zealand. We've got over 500 components in our board game, and it would have been made from people all over New Zealand, and we'd have to package it up. So we ruled that out straight away because no one's going to want to buy a game for $600 to $900 retail price. So we're mainly looking over in China and got different quotes, jumped on different video calls with different manufacturers, and at the end, what I ended up doing was I reached out to other board game companies that had manufactured and started selling games in New Zealand, and I said, hey, who do you use to manufacture? And most of them replied, and they replied even with like who they use for logistics, insurance, everything. They were just so amazing. And once again, backing down, and we live in such an awesome country for business. But they ended up replying, and a few of them said the same company. So I reached out to them, had a video call, and they were awesome. I've kind of been with them ever since. And you end up working with them really closely. They have board game engineers, which are like, oh, we see you've like prototyped that part. We think this would work really well. They've also done so many different games that they know what is possible. So it was a really easy process of what the game would actually look like in the finish. The most exciting thing was when we received that first digital sample of it looking like a game that could be on the retail shelf. You're like, holy moly, like I've actually created something. And so that was surreal. Even if I had to pick it up from the airport because the shipping was delayed and we had an expo the day after. So that was a chaotic time. Very much kind of everything we've done has just been chaotic and last minute, but somehow we've got there and it keeps your hustle going. So yeah, it was a very fun process to see in real time it all turning from basically scrap pieces of paper into a real finished product, and yeah, very worth it. And yeah, then it came to getting the 2,000 games manufactured, and then that's when you got to think to yourself, am I actually committing to this $50,000 order, or do I not want to do it? But as soon as you click go, there's no turning back.
I'm sure it was a very exciting moment though, having that first milestone achieved, right?
And we actually ended up going over to Shanghai as well, actually because we made a promise to have the games manufactured before Christmas. That was the big part of our crowdfunding campaign, was Christmas presents sorted. They're arriving in November. And we got told that with all the samples backwards and forwards of the mass production samples and the shipping delays, that it was likely the games weren't going to arrive in time for Christmas. So within 2 weeks, I think it was, I was on a plane to Shanghai to meet them, to basically sit down and within 1 day sign off on everything, which saved about 3 weeks of them shipping over samples and us signing off. So yeah, that was a quick 4-day trip in Shanghai, but ended up being so valuable to meet them and led to other things as well. And yeah, it was pretty cool. With first business trip over to meet the manufacturers. Yeah.
You'd recommend it to other kind of founders to actually go over and meet your manufacturers in person?
100%. I think anything you can do in person these days is so valuable. There's a lot of, and most people know this or say that they prefer in-person meetings rather than a Zoom call, but getting to actually see people, and we had a big lunch with them, big dinner with them, being able to establish that relationship, you also realize the scale of China, and that, and not to discredit from their cheaper labor prices play into it, but the reason that those prices are so much lower than they are in New Zealand, one, they have the capability to do so much more than us, and one factory does all components you could think of. But also we're talking about printers that are the size of this room we're sitting in, that are printing 16,000 game boards every hour. There's no reason New Zealand would ever have that sort of scale or that sort of equipment. So it's, yeah, when you see what equipment they're working with over there, you start to realize why you're able to order 2,000 board games for so much cheaper than you could here.
Yeah. What, during that like kind of manufacturing process, what did you have like a big lesson that you kind of take forward in that process, or maybe something that really surprised you about the process?
Definitely you learn very quickly when people tell you to double or triple your time frames that they're not kidding. You think everything is, oh, we'll give a week here, 2 weeks here, 6 weeks there, and it's like 3 days could be pushed out right at the start, and that 3 days leads to an 8-week delay by the end of the process. And yeah, as soon as you promise timelines to retail stores back in New Zealand or people, it's very hard to end up sticking to those timelines if you're trying to make them as short as possible. So you've got to be aware of how long it takes. Other than that, nothing completely stands out lesson wise. I would say that we've probably gotten very lucky with our manufacturers, with the quality, with how good they are with us. There's been delays due to some mishaps and things like that, but that's always going to happen. You hear horror stories, but we've been pretty lucky.
Nice. I guess from getting that production, now it was getting it into stores. What did that kind of process look like for you from kind of first conversation to seeing it on your first retail shelf?
So our very first retail store we ever got was the Warehouse, which is probably pretty uncommon for a lot of small businesses starting up. And I get asked a lot, how did we get into the Warehouse? And it's probably not a story that you can replicate too easily. So we actually met them over in Shanghai. So that's why I say it ended up being a super valuable trip. But I put up a LinkedIn post saying I'm in Shanghai for a couple of days. Would anyone like to meet? And the supply manager of the warehouse group, who lives in Shanghai but is from New Zealand, got tagged, and he reached out and said, come hang out with us. So yeah, spent probably 2 to 4 hours with them at their big HQ over in Shanghai. And by the end of it, he had rung the buyer back in New Zealand and said, when Shenanigans is a thing, we're going to stock it. So immediately we just had an awesome relationship with them, and the buyer has been the most amazing person well, they're all great, but he has just been so supportive from day one, and all of them have. So to have such a big store back us right from day one, and obviously then it made it easier to leverage that to get into Whitcoulls. We're now in Farmers from a couple of weeks time from now, Mighty Ape, and then also the likes of Valentine's, Hupper, the smaller stores as well, that came on board really early and really did show us support. There was a lot of players supporting a local founder as well, probably, but it's the goal is to, you know, turn that into, they see it's actually worthwhile in a business transaction as well. So yeah, we were probably not as the same process as what a lot of people go through. It was normally just a general chit chat, and then we would get the PO. So I'm very grateful for that.
I guess it just shows the kind of the power of platforms like LinkedIn, but also just sharing your journey and sharing your story, right? What you're doing and putting those opportunities out there, because if you hadn't have asked, you wouldn't have necessarily got the opportunity. But it's that kind of Kiwi nature and small 100%. Connections, and we always say yes to a coffee or a drink, and I think that's the important part.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of things that we do behind the scene as well, of making sure that when we reach out to a retail store that they may have seen the business, like putting up billboards in specific locations where they're going to drive past the mall on their way to work and might see the game, so that it's top of mind and those sort of things as well. But at the end of the day, like when I send an email, and basically with all our retail stores, it's actually come from warm intros, someone knowing someone and putting us in contact with the buyer. But if I do send an email, more often than not, they're actually looking at me as the brand. And when they go onto my LinkedIn, or I send most of my messages from LinkedIn, because I know when they look at my profile, they can see that the work that I've been putting in, they can see what I've been doing to make this happen, rather than them just Googling the website, seeing the product like they would every single day. So it's making sure that when I've got that brand, personal brand, that actually helps with selling the product of, oh, she's doing something. So yeah.
Awesome. I guess for a personal note for you, what does it feel like walking into a store and seeing your game on a shelf? Is it quite surreal?
Yeah, it's pretty surreal. The first time I saw it in a store, it would have been Hopper, which is 2 local gift shops in Christchurch, and that was very cool. I think just to see it in the environment that you've pictured it in, and to know that people are, and I think someone had it in their hands when I first walked into the store, and so to see someone like buying it the first time I ever saw it in a store, I was like, how cool is that? Then to see it in the warehouse for the first time, that was a pretty cool day. I dragged my flatmate along to film my reaction of seeing it, and to see it like right in the middle of Monopoly and Articulate and all the games that you'd been using as like market research, to see it sitting there. And then part of some research that we've done, like I spend a couple of hours at different warehouses and see when people walk down the aisle of the games, what they're looking at and things like that. And I've gone up to a lady that's gone to purchase Shenanigans and been like, oh, I'm so sorry to do this, I just, thank you, that's my game. Like, yeah, so there's all these little moments that definitely make it all worth it. And when you know people are buying it, you're like, oh, okay, at least it's doing what it needs to do.
So what's next for Shenanigans?
Overseas. So it's hard to grow a business to where you want with only 5 million people in New Zealand. We've absolutely loved the progress and everything that we've done in New Zealand, the stores that we're now in. But yeah, it's definitely to have that scale, to have that growth, and to be able to do more in New Zealand with it as well. We need the sales numbers and bring in more games from or putting them overseas and selling them overseas. So we do have another game coming out. So we've got Stack and Steel, which is a card game version of the game. That's coming out in November. And then we've got another game coming out early next year, and then 3 more games later on in the year. So one, we're growing Flip the Table Games, which is the overarching company where we're creating more products, so we've got more things to sell. All within the same space. So we want to create games that spark confidence, curiosity, and conversation around taboo subjects that aren't talked about enough. So yeah, on that side, we're growing our product, growing our product portfolio, and then on the other side, going overseas. So we're starting to sell in Australia. Been talking to quite a large distributor over in the UK, and then our focus is Amazon for America, and really growing more of an e-commerce presence over in America. So setting up all the behind the scenes logistics to do that has been a big part of what we're doing. So it's a lot of background work. So sometimes I feel like people think I'm doing absolutely nothing because I'm just like sitting on my computer planning and like setting up behind the scenes distribution. But there's stuff in the making. Yeah.
It all sounds very exciting, and I think it's only just the beginning of your kind of game takeover. Before we kind of wrap up, I guess it's always nice to finish on a bit of advice for people thinking about founding, or for our young entrepreneurs going through things like the YES program. What would be your one piece of advice for someone thinking of starting a business?
It's going to sound like really basic advice because I feel like I talk about a lot, and YES is a big push of this, but genuinely just start. I think people wait to find out more information, or wait until they've got more money or more resources, or they meet the right person. But you talk to any business owner, and the more I'm around business owners and successful business owners, you realize that everyone starts with no idea what they're doing, no real game plan. You can have a business plan, but really in their head they're like, I have no idea how this is going to turn out. But the difference is that every day they just start doing little things that end up leading into bigger things. And if you just have the mindset of, well, I'm going to make this happen no matter what, you end up actually doing it and you stick with it. And it can just be like one tiny thing that you do every day to give you a bit of progress. And it's as long as you start, you're going to get somewhere. And yeah, I would say if you just keep going, there's no really reason why a business can't be successful. People say it comes down to luck, but I think that luck is determined by just a lot of action and people going above and beyond to be a little bit cheeky at times. That you've got to ask the questions that you don't want to ask. You've got to do the posts that you don't want to post. You've got to ask for things that you feel like, oh, that might be pushing it. But they're the people that end up making real progress. So yeah, I suppose my advice is now turned into just be a bit cheeky, because normally it's the ones that aren't afraid to just put themselves out there end up getting somewhere and making insane progress, because it's that one person that they talk to end up changing everything, or led them to somewhere, or they got the thing that they asked for that someone else was too afraid to ask. So yeah, I'd say just do it and ask for anything.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alli. Well, Alli, your story is such a powerful reminder that you don't have to have it all figured out to get started. Just the courage to take the first step and keep learning along the way. Don't forget to check out Sharenanigans online and in store at the warehouse or Whitcoulls, or maybe some of your local stores, for some investing fun for your next game night. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure you follow the Launchpad podcast wherever you listen, and share it with a friend or family member who's got a business idea waiting to be brought to life. Thank you for joining us, Alli.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.